So I'd love to go into a little bit of detail about how this actually works. We've talked about what it looks like, we've talked about the threats, but now I want to make sure you understand how this technology is actually developed and, more importantly, who's developing this technology. So I talked a little bit earlier about synthetic facial manipulation. There are actually 3 different types. There's vector-driven, animation-driven, and audio-driven. Animation-driven is the most common type, right? It's the deep fake of Tom Cruise saying stuff that he never actually did. But with vector-driven, what you can actually do is change the characteristics of a human being. You can upload a picture of anybody and make them young or old or change their race or age or gender, right? And that presents very powerful and manipulative tools to create human beings that don't exist, that look exactly like you want them to. We also have animation-driven facial synthesis, right? This is using a network called Deep Face Lab, which was developed in partnership with a university in China that is able to develop really hyper-realistic, cutting-edge facial manipulation technology. That is Deep Tom Cruise, as we saw earlier. And this is one that was created in 2020.
America. You blame me for interfering with your democracy, but I don't have to. You are doing it to yourselves. Polling stations are closing, you don't know who to trust, you are divided. There are strings we can pull, but we don't have to. You are pulling them for us.
So our enemies are creating this technology, right? They're developing it in near-peer adversary countries, and they're already using it to promote misinformation. That video in 2020 was a little bit fake. Here's one that was released just last week in Russian that presents current state-of-the-art technology.
Приветствую вас всех, дорогие друзья, в этот нелегкий час. Мошенники стали еще и более изощренными. Вы, наверное, уже видели то,
This is a prominent Russian politician.
The face and the head look weird. It looks weird. There's something.
That's right. It still looks a little bit off, right? It tracks that part of your brain that says something's a little bit strange. But as we can see, going from 2020 to 2022, it's already quite a bit better. And as the technology continues to develop and advance and get more sophisticated and easier to develop, we're soon going to approach a singularity where it's going to become so realistic and so fast and so good that the human brain won't tell that it's fake. Additionally, even if you can tell that it's fake, there's a large percentage of the population that is less educated, less informed, that would be fooled by this type of technology, right? So this is an example of a technology that came out just a couple of weeks ago, in fact, that doesn't need any training data from a person. So it might be easy to get training data of President Biden. It'd be a little bit more difficult to get training data of you, for example. But with just one picture, they can now create fully realistic, or at least nearly fully realistic, facial manipulations. And this is presented by this painting, right? There's no video data of the Mona Lisa, but from just one picture, they can animate her face, make her say or do pretty much anything. So imagine all of the, TikTok posts and Instagram posts of enlisted US airmen on social media. You just need a little bit of data, one picture and maybe 5 minutes of their voice. You can make them say anything. And those data requirements are getting lesser and lesser. And Deep Media is advancing this technology as well, to be clear. But we're creating walled garden approach. We're not giving access to this technology to anyone outside of our own company, right? We're using it and developing products like the Universal Translator that promote communication and collaboration, but at the same time, we're using that data to build the detection capability, which we'll talk about here in a second. And then here, to your point, sir, the picture-based face swapping, right? We can take just one image of a person and put that person's face in a situation where they were never in. And that is a lot more difficult to detect because you don't have those cues. So you can take a photograph of a president or a senator or a DOD operative and put them in a compromising photograph, right, that never actually happened. So the more cutting edge version of this is actually audio-driven facial animation. And that was the Elon Musk deepfake video, right? You take a video that exists where the body language is perfect. There isn't that weird head movement, right? And you just animate the mouth with a synthetic piece of audio. And here's an example of that technology.
这两个年轻人不讲武德，来骗，来偷袭我69岁的。
Right, and so these 3 different types of technologies combined show the current state of the art of what synthetic media can do. they can essentially manipulate anyone's face and voice to make them say anything. And when combined with what we call secondary facial synthesis, those outputs start to look highly realistic and highly difficult to detect. That means when you combine all these 10 different networks, you have hundreds of thousands of different options of what the end state would look like. And the only way to actually detect those is to pioneer these and develop the data sets of all these combinations. And that's what Deep Media has done. A lot of this research is coming out of China and Russia, but Deep Media has been re-implementing custom versions of all of these networks and many more to generate the data sets required for effective detection. And so going into a little bit of voice, we talked about face a lot, but what we're seeing as a major threat is the combination of synthetic faces and voices. Sure, you can make Elon Musk or President Biden say something, but if it doesn't sound like that person, people will be able to tell that it's fake. And synthetic vocal manipulation is actually much more difficult than synthetic facial manipulation, but the technology is advancing very rapidly. So here's a piece of media that the company created for a SOCOM briefing late last year.
This is not General Stan McChrystal. This is a deep fake created by Deep Media. With a single audio book read by General McChrystal, we can make him say that he absolutely adores 50 Shades of Grey, or even something a lot more sinister. Deep Media is using this technology to build a universal translator for consumer and enterprise applications. We hope that by partnering with the United States government, we can protect this technology from those who would abuse it, and ensure that deepfakes are used ethically in the best interest of America and our allies.
So imagine being able to make someone say something that they never actually said. That audio sample combined with a video sample being promoted across social media or WhatsApp. Again, we're talking about very real threats that are occurring today that harm U.S. interests, U.S. DoD interests, and even can threaten political careers, government careers. Basically, without true effective knowledge and detection of this technology, people are at risk and lives are at risk. And so going over text-to-speech and vocal cloning here, and started out with these two networks. And again, all of this information will be available to everyone here later. You'll actually have access to this deck. So I won't go into too much detail right now. But these new modern networks that are being pioneered allow highly realistic vocal synthesis, right? So we've gone from Siri and Amazon Alexa to being able to actually say something that appears fully realistic in someone's own voice. Right? And again, if you look at where this technology is being developed, it is not being developed inside the United States. And that is a very real threat that we need to correct as soon as possible. Now, synthetic voice manipulation can be used to develop hyper-advanced phishing techniques, like you were suggesting earlier. Someone's grandmother or an enlisted officer, instead of getting an email or a text, they get a phone call, right, from a superior officer who can leak critical information or can fraud or scam them, right? And finally, fake samples of audio of incriminating evidence can ruin entire careers. I mean, we saw during the 2016 election certain audio samples from both sides being promoted for political reasons. Now imagine if those audio samples are fake and there's no way to detect that they're fake. People will lose trust in what's real and what's not, and that is very dangerous.